Okay, what's up, guys? So, in the spirit of loving our enemies, guys, I did want to, I was thinking about this actually for a few months now of what would I would say to unbelievers or, you know, um, people who are not Christians, and some of my suggestions for just kind of this temporary life, guys. Now, uh, let me give you some insight into this sort of thought process is just because because Jesus wants us to love our enemies, guys. There is an understanding that there are people that God has allowed to be in creation that may choose to not be with God himself, okay? And so they may choose to reject God for whatever reason. But nevertheless, guys, I wanted to make this video for whoever may watch it or see it, guys, or maybe just this concept can spread, is the idea of trying to help our enemies, guys. And so, one of the things that I would suggest for people who are not Christian is to really clean up your life and kind of speed up the process of what sort of the book of Revelation talks about. Even though, again, guys, this is from a standpoint of trying to help people, even though I know that in the long run, they may still reject Jesus, guys. But there's nevertheless, I do think this world can use some improvement, even from the standpoint of people who are not living a Christian life. And what I mean by cleaning up your life, guys, is getting more private about the lifestyle choices or the sin or whatever. And guys, I want to come off in a non-judgmental. I'm not trying to come off as a superior person or something like that. By the grace of God, guys, I feel like Christianity is the right way and the way, the truth, and the life, guys. But I do feel like the Bible is bringing out a good point, even though this may not have always happened in every community that is non-Christian. But this is what I mean by cleaning up your life is uh, sin more in private is what I'm trying to say, guys. And now I obviously know this is happening, guys. Um, where people are more behind closed doors these days about their sinful lifestyle or choices, guys. But there are a lot of areas, guys, where sin is still exposed in a public way. And so, even though obviously, guys, as a Christian, in every way, I choose to join with Jesus on the rejection of sin, guys. But I'm still a human being, guys, and so I do believe that if you are going to choose to sin, guys, or all that comes with not living a Christian lifestyle, um, I highly recommend getting more private about your sins. Okay, and then the reason for that, I believe, is because society just functions better, I believe, even though society as a whole is rejecting Jesus, guys. But a lot of sins kind of intersect into people's religious beliefs. It's not just necessarily about the Christian lifestyle, guys, but certain sins that we may allow as a society, guys, are even harmful to other people's lifestyles, because a lot of people are segregated in the types of sins that they either like or dislike, even in the non Christian community, guys. And so, overall, as a whole, one thing I would recommend is getting to a more private place in regards to other people with your sin, guys. Now, obviously, God sees all, there's no escape from God's view, but that's what I would suggest. Another thing that I thought of, guys, um, in regards to, helpful advice for those that are not Christian is, let me pause the video here so I can think of this correctly. Okay, I remembered. The legalization of certain things, guys, how we are regulating laws, especially here in the United States, guys. I highly recommend for people who are non-Christian that some of the things that, they are sort of banning or regulating in a heavy kind of way, I do believe does not make sense in regards to certain lifestyle choices that are outside of Christianity. For example, guys, you know, um, the idea that weed, for example, had been banned for years, in the United States, and a lot of people have been policed or um, arrested or been given, some crazy, charges or jail time in regards to weed alone, guys. And then we as a society, like years later, all of a sudden legalize weed, and uh, all the people that got in trouble or something, or got had a hard time because maybe they sold weed or grew weed or just consumed weed, and the cops saw them or something. I think that same concept is going with some of the present drugs that are even on the market today, guys. And so, if I understand, sort of that there's, government policy, and then there's, the economy, there's different factors that go into why laws are passed or not. It's not just a difference between right and wrong. It is, kind of the money aspect too. I think the marijuana industry changed because I think it's true that the government, started to see the profitability of legalizing marijuana for one, and regulating it so they can get a profit off of it too. But honestly, guys, no offense to Mr. President Trump or any of the high government officials, but I do believe that same kind of concept is going on with other drugs, including something like fentanyl, guys. Um, Here's the reason. Because, and now again, the Bible declares that, especially with Jesus, what the king does or says is never wrong, right? But, those in high positions do have a reason for what they do. And obviously, I'm just kind of a random guy here on YouTube sharing my opinion. But, for example, to um, go all the way to maybe Venezuela to capture Nicolas Maduro, and then to think about the reason why was because of a drug like fentanyl, guys. Um, in my opinion, guys, fentanyl is sort of in the same category as weed. And here's the reasons: because yes, weed is kind of a safer drug where, for a long time they said you could not even overdose on weed. Now they have currently, kind of said that you can sort of overdose on weed in some way, shape, or form. They kind of corrected that, guys. But here is the point that I'm trying to make in the idea of correction and just like we changing our mind as a society, guys. Um, in regards to fentanyl, I do think there needs to be more education and help from the government in regards to its use and distribution, and education about the knowledge of how to use it, guys. Because here's the reason why, guys. Fentanyl is one of those drugs that I have discovered is used in medical settings, guys. Now, again, there's probably things that I just don't know about certain topics, guys. I'm just giving you my opinion, at least from the surface level, guys. Um, if fentanyl, especially down the road, guys, when it gets refined or it gets more safe or whatever, and you think about kind of the crime and the crackdown, so to speak, on the drug of fentanyl, and yet if it can, uh be looked at as weed, like weed is, where eventually it could get legalized and, integrated into society, to think about the policing and the justice system that is around the what we call fentanyl crisis, um which by the way is we I never heard of years ago either. It's all of a sudden there's this, new drug fentanyl that is a huge problem. um I believe that, if it is, we need to slow our roll on, the law enforcement side of some of these drugs, especially if we're just repeating what we did with weed. And so that's one of the things that I would like to share, guys, because, guys, when you do fentanyl, guys, now, again, I have my opinion on drugs and alcohol and things that we consume, guys. I did multiple videos on this on my other channel called YE Church Online. And so this video is not necessarily in in endorsing drug use or, the specific use of fentanyl, guys. But one of the dangerous sides of fentanyl is the unregulated amount that you get where you end up overdosing, guys. It's not necessarily the fentanyl itself, guys. It's the usage and the improper usage that is happening amongst the community of people using fentanyl on the streets, guys. When you think about the definition of the word overdose, guys, it implies that it's different from the word poison. Overdose is different from the word poison. And repeatedly, the problem that people seem to be having is a overdose problem, not necessarily a consumption of poison problem, that they are unaware that the whole product is just, a poison in general. I don't believe fentanyl, at least in my initial experience or knowledge of it, is directly a poison. I think it is an area where people are overdosing and killing themselves, which means that there is no kind of education or uh you know real regulation or even the organization like we do with weed, guys. Especially if you look at dispensaries, guys, they have regulated where you can only get so much weed at a time, or they have these little individual, like, daily little doses that you can get instead of buying a whole bunch of weed on its own. They have different tiers of what you can get in weed. And so for fentanyl, yes, there is a huge government law crackdown on these so-called dangerous drugs, guys. But, I, in my, sort of novice opinion, guys, um, some of these things need to be have some of these things need a second look at in regards to, how society is sort of looking at these things, especially, guys, um when you think about, the practical side, guys. I mean, just from a naturalistic standpoint, guys. Now, when you think about putting someone in jail for a plant that they consumed, guys, um, it's just weird, when you think about it like that. Now, obviously, guys, it becomes a problem when the plant or the fentanyl or the alcohol is sort of aiding in you, making other poor decisions, like to do a crime or something, guys. But here's one of the advantages of being a Christian, guys, is the Bible, which many people do not know or have not, come to an understanding, is the Bible does declare, especially in the New Testament, guys, that the things that we eat or drink are not in control of the behavior choices that we are making all the time, guys. And so I don't really have time in this video to unpack and explain that for everyone watching this or may watch this later, guys. But quickly, guys, there are times where I have sinned the same sins, even though I've been completely sober and never even had a drink of alcohol ever in my life, guys. And so to understand the connection between, Christianity and what it teaches, especially here in the United States where so many of us claim that we live in a Christian country, guys, um, especially when you talk about the fentanyl crisis or something, guys, there needs to be a little bit more understanding and I think help from these government agencies, not necessarily to crack down on it where you're throwing people in jail and you're capturing presidents of a country because of this so-called drug that is ruining so many people's lives. I just personally believe there needs to be more education on to prevent people from overdosing, guys. To just That's what I'm trying to say in regards to fentanyl is, yeah, there could be some more dynamics in regards to that, guys. But because they use it in a medical setting, and because I personally have seen that people can um, be in some very painful ways of life, guys, that are hard to really exist, like on a whole other level, guys. And when they're dealing with this every single day and they feel like weed is not necessarily cutting it for them, they feel that the doctor's office or the network of how to get help when you're in chronic pain situations is sort of failing them. And I do think there needs to be more help towards the people that are in these situations. And one of those ways could be the research and development of the drug fentanyl instead of trying to crack down on the usage of it so much, especially when so many people are using it. Then you have this small segment of the government that's fighting its own people and it's the people's own desire, guys. It sort of doesn't make sense, guys. And so, it's kind of like the Adam and Eve thing, guys. Adam and Eve did not necessarily get in trouble for eating from a physical tree that God said not to eat from, guys. It was the power behind the tree, for one, in some concept, but it was also the idea behind the tree, which is, disobeying God and understanding why God says, something is right or wrong. And so that same concept is today, guys, that we can so sort of as a society focus on the eating of the physical tree. Oh, Adam and Eve got in trouble because they ate a physical tree. Or, oh, these people are so bad because they are consuming this physical plant here on this earth. And that's not the case, guys. If you have a deeper understanding of the Bible, guys, you need to understand that people's sins are different from the consumption of water or, the consumption of certain types of alcohol or, there is not always a direct connection, is what I'm trying to say, which is really what the Bible says in the things that we eat or drink, or in other case, the things that we consume from this world, guys. And if you somehow have some sort of weird connection that can develop in your mind that eating a plant from this earth, that even though it does make you kind of have a different mindset, than when you don't consume the plant. But to the very concept, guys, of throwing someone in jail for years and years over a plant, and especially when it comes to kind of the factors around how they use that plant, guys, you can see there's a huge kind of disconnect in our justice system and common sense, or people that have some sort of knowledge. There's a huge disconnect between how we are treating these other marginalized groups. And so those are the two things that I would share, for this kind of video of how my advice to unbelievers or to the sinful community. If you're not Christian, um, that's one thing that I would share, guys. Um, Now, obviously, there are more factors that go into play in regards to fentanyl and drug use, guys, because the Bible does warn against excess, or another word that we modernly call is overdose, or what the Bible calls drunkenness. And so, I know growing up, 18 to 25-year-old, um, you may not have that education in your life to stay away from excess, overdose, or what the Bible calls as drunkenness. And so the Bible does make a connection, though, between our behavior and when we are consumed with excess amount of alcohol or drugs or plants or water or whatever it may be. I think the Bible, even when in regards to money, guys, the Bible does condemn excess, or what we would call, excessive riches, especially when you make the connection of how people are either using or not using their money. uh, you know uh, the Bible does talk about that, guys. And so, in regards to specifically fentanyl, guys, I'm not a scientist or, really a, super experienced person in regards to fentanyl, guys, and all the different dynamics and pros and cons and side effects of the drug or whatever, guys. And so there could be other reasons, but as far as a simplistic view, guys, I do think if the government focuses on educating people on how to use the drug and not overdose, is what I'm trying to say simply. But two, if this drug is on the same level as weed, I do think America, to avoid embarrassment, especially in the future, guys, should pump the brakes a little bit on the law enforcement of fentanyl if we are missing the concept that it could be the same as weed in regards to how we could be treating it in society, and the whole law enforcement thing that we are sort of making a problem for. Now, guys, I'm all for, the law enforcement of, things that are connected to kind of the people that are in charge of making this drug. For example, slavery, or sex slavery or sex trafficking, guys, or the usage of drugs to control someone or to enslave them in some way, to control their mind or choices or their ability to, control what happens to them, guys. The you know connection between these other things, yeah, I do believe God calls us to have a law enforcement system to prevent these things from going on, like sex trafficking or something. But guys, to when it comes to just, sort of a plant, a wheat, something like weed, or something that we may cultivate in a lab and eat, and it has effects to us, guys. um and especially something that people do deem, even though it is a marginalized, sort of looked down class of people, they do feel like it is helpful in some way, shape, or form in their life, guys. I do think that, in these certain areas, there needs to be more education, more partnership with the government to kind of reach into these people's lives and meet them where they are, instead of just sending a police officer to arrest them and throw them into jail and somehow send them to detox and tell them not to eat this plant that you can find on earth, or don't eat this tree. Again, God was not mad at Adam and Eve for necessarily the concept of eating a tree or something, a wrong tree or right tree in his creation. It's the power behind that tree. It's the effects of that tree, so to speak, in regards to their rebellion to not obey God in many other aspects of life that we now know in 2026, that the tree represented all types of sin and behavior, guys, that Adam and Eve, you know, uh, pretty much represented the choice of all of us human beings that we would make if we were put in the position of Adam and Eve. So, thanks so much, guys. Hopefully, this was helpful to someone. I hope someone important watches this, guys. There's someone with influence. But thanks so much, guys, and God bless you. See ya.